get started. Whenever bored, you dudes in the latest news. Complex and interesting, take the time out to invest in straight talk wrestling. Get the facts, get the tables, get the
Wrestling fans, what's going on? It's your host, your boy, George Mackay, back again on Straight Talk Wrestling. You know me, you know my beautiful face. And today with me is a third-time returning guest, one of my favorite people, a true inspiration to myself, and no matter what he says, it's the truth. Please help me welcome my good friend, Jan Murphy, back to Straight Talk Wrestling. How are you, sir?
Very well, George. Thank you. A third time. Is it really three?
It is three. So the first time we did it was right before you did Chinlock 5, where you had Bret Hart and Hornswoggle and Tully Blanchard and that whole meet and greet. Mark Henry, Tommy Dreamer was incredible. And you actually helped me secure my very first big name interview, which was Tommy Dreamer. You got me about a half an hour with him, which was incredibly changing for the little small podcast that I had at the time to what's grown to be quite the namesake now. But if it wasn't for you and those big moves you helped me make early on, who knows where Straight Talk would have been. So thank you for that.
I say all the time, opportunity presents itself, but you need help along the way. And I remember getting help along the way, and I'm actually working with. You probably saw him on a couple of our shows now. A young kid by the name of Brody Barron comes from Saskatoon, and I didn't have, when I broke into this crazy wrestling world trying to cover professional wrestling, I didn't have somebody like me until Dreamer came along. So I was out floating on my own for a long time, and I'm trying to make sure Brody never has to be on his own like that, trying to help him out and get him some opportunities. So I'm always happy to help where I can, and congratulations on everything you've done. I see all the big interviews you're landing now. It's excellent. I'm happy for you.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And I appreciate that. And it's always great to have somebody to strive for and look up to. And I'd say you and Chris Van Vliet, really, honestly, and truly my two biggest influences in this crazy world of wrestling, because I see two guys from Canada, normal as myself, two more handsome than myself. I say I'm the third handsomest in that group. But everything you've done, man, from even the time where you kind of stepped away from writing and reporting to getting back into it now. And I mean, I believe it was your 8th or 9th WrestleMania that you just finished covering, which was 40, which was incredible. 8 WrestleManias, 8 coverages, and anybody in Canada, if they've picked up a newspaper at one point or another, any article written about wrestling, well, 75% of them, 80% of them written by you. And it's incredible. But the stories that you've told, I mean, when it comes to putting pen to paper and having the passion for pro wrestling, nobody does it better. A lot of your articles are incredible. You pulled me into the point where I feel like I'm right beside you. The goal is to be right beside you one day in the media room, but I feel like I'm right beside you. So talk to me about that, about how you find the simplest way, but you pull the reader in. And it's such a hard time to do, especially in this world where everything's at our fingertips.
Well, I mean, first of all, thank you. That's way too kind. And when I have a Van Vliet interview coming out probably next week, I sat down with him. We did about 40 minutes together. And again, there's a guy who I look to. We're doing this interview talking about some of the great interviews that he's done and how I just respect the hell out of him. Excellent interviewer, like Howard Stern level interviewer, just polished and asks all the right questions, gets the answers that everyone wants to hear. Very, very elite. And he says to me, I used to read your column. I'm like, first of all, it makes me feel really old, but it also makes me feel really special, because I've been doing it that long that a guy like that remembers reading my stuff when he was younger. And it's for me, I made a decision a long time ago when I first started covering professional wrestling, and I was working at a newspaper, at a mainstream, legitimate daily newspaper, the oldest one in Canada. I had a decision to make, because at that time there were starting to be some what they call dirt sheets. I don't think we call them that anymore unless you're old school like me. There were starting to be some people covering it like that, insider stuff, unfounded sources, things like that, backstage sources. And I had to make a decision at the time. Do I want to go that route, or do I want to go and do something that really isn't being done or hasn't been done since kind of WWF magazine, which was features on the men and women who go into this crazy world. And I thought, that sounds a lot more fun, and I'm probably going to get access quicker to talent if they trust that I'm not just looking to blow out news, things like that. And not that I don't respect that, because we do that in my real job as a journalist. That's part of the gig all the time. Like when you're covering city hall and police and everything else. So I totally respect that. And um, but I made the decision at that time that I wanted to explore the people behind the characters a little bit more so than what was happening inside the ring or inside the company.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And your stories, the way you've told them, the way the articles are written, the way the interviews are conducted is phenomenal. You want to talk about Howard Stern level interviews? I would put you right in there. My favorite one that you've done of recent was the one with the Undertaker. It was an incredible read. It was an incredible expose into the mind, and it's something that, in my opinion, it kind of, if you read that article first, then you start listening to the Undertaker's podcast, it flows perfectly. It's almost like this is like the introduction to a biography. This is that little subtext, and then we get into the meat and potatoes. And that one for me was one of my personal favorites. But speaking of which, with all the men and women that in this crazy business that you've sat down with, I know the Undertaker's got to rank high, but
Oh yeah.
who else do you put up there as some of your fondest conversations?
The reason the Undertaker sits where it does was they made that decision following the WrestleMania match with AJ Styles that was kind of going to be it, and they were they had all this footage they were going to put into this documentary, and he had to make the decision at the time: am I going to start doing media and put away the Undertaker character and just be Mark? And he did, and I just happened to be uh, good and close with some of the WWE reps. So when some media became available, they reached out and said, "Hey, Taker's doing a small select number of media. Are you interested? I know you're not really in the game anymore, but do you still have access to the big papers?" And I was like, "Of course I do. I still have all those connections." And absolutely. So the reason it worked out so well is that I was one of 5 or 6 that he did initially, that before he started telling those stories in his one man show and podcast and everything else. So it was pretty, like, I remember that day shaking, waiting for that call. That rarely happens 20 some years in, that was at that time 20 years into my career. It's happened a few times. Um, Terry Funk is another one that jumps out. So Dreamer connected me with Terry Funk, and we just had this hour-long conversation talking about just everything, going way, way back to his family roots and his career and Mick Foley and the fact that he just was ageless and timeless at that time. And it was just a really fun, relaxed, easy conversation. And I probably happened about, I'm going to say about 2012, 13, maybe 14, somewhere around there. And when it was done, we had had such fun. When I hung up, I texted Dreamer to say, "Oh my God, thank you. That was amazing." And he calls me maybe 2 minutes after my text. He's like, "Hey, Terry just called me. He said he wanted to let you know that he loved the interview. He thought you were really, really cool, and to thank you." And I was like, "Whoa, this is Terry Funk. Like, he's on the mountain, like, you know, legitimately." So that one stands out. Thea Trinidad, again, another Dreamer connection. No one had heard of Thea Trinidad at that point too much. She'd had a little bit of time in, I think it was TNA. So this was prior to her signing with WWE. She was working with Dreamer at the time for House of Hardcore, and he said to me, "Ask her about her dad. I know she will trust you with, talking about her dad." So I did. He said, "Just to let you know, her father died in 9/11." So as we were working our way through the interview, it came to the subject, and I said, "I understand that you lost your dad in 9/11, and it was probably 5 of the most sad, polarizing moments I've ever had in an interview." But she just detailed how he called home from whatever floor he was on, the 151st or the 148th floor, whatever it was. He called home to say goodbye, and she could hear, you know, her mom on the phone with her dad who was calling to say goodbye, and minutes later the tower collapsed. I mean, that stuff just stays with you. John Cena, the first time I interviewed him was in person in Kingston when he was the US champ, and for whatever reason, and Van Vliet's very good at this, when he's interviewing somebody in person, he can pick up on physical things that they're wearing, or uh, tendencies that they might have, or something he might have noticed something that they do while they're in a match. But Cena had been wearing that black band not long at the time around his arm, so I asked him about it, and it was a great story about they grew up with their grandmother living in their house, and she used to cook all of his meals, and he was very very close to his grandma, and she passed away just prior to that, and he was wearing the band out of respect to her. And again, that sort of, when you ask a question like that early enough, it sort of sets the stage, and they get comfortable and they realize, okay, that's always for me an important thing early in an interview, is to make them comfortable, make them realize, you don't come out of the shoots with, hey CM Punk, why did you leave WWE, or why'd you say that about Triple H, or you just don't. If you want to work your way to that, you might get there. They might offer it on their own. um those ones stand out. I mean, there've been so many, and Cody Rhodes, after he won the championship in like a few days after, or the day after, it was a couple days after, pretty special. Because you're getting real, genuine, authentic feelings, right, from people, and to me, those are the best interviews, when you can pull something out of somebody that's real. I have a chuckle sometimes, because the newer kids will, and I hear them sometimes. They'll ask the reps, "Am I in character? Or am I out of character for these interviews?" WWE doesn't really care if they're bringing you out. I will say this: if they're offering you someone, or they're bringing someone out, they're allowed to be in or out of character. It really doesn't matter. They won't bring out people who they don't want interviewed out of character. So they don't bring out Dom Mysterio. They just don't. They don't bring out, you know, members of the Wyatt. They they just won't offer those people up, because they want to keep them in character. Right? That was like the Undertaker. They just didn't offer up the Undertaker for years. It was, they keep them in character. So when you can pull somebody out of character, I had a little laugh in Toronto for Money in the Bank weekend. Tiffany Stratton was coming out, and she was trying to be in character for these interviews. And you only get one or two questions at these junkets, and I'm like, I don't have time for this to be in character, because I need a couple of, something a little bit different. So she comes out, and she breaks right into character about Toronto, cutting a promo on Toronto, and I just immediately hit her back with, "So your mom introduced you and suggested that you go into wrestling," and it stopped her right in her tracks. She didn't quite know how to answer that. She was about half in character. She gave that answer, and then I hit her with another personal one and pulled her right out of character before she even knew it. Right? Again, that's her inexperience versus my experience. So it used to be the other way around, right? They could pull me into being in character. Now, the funnest interview I ever did was R-Truth and Little Jimmy in character. I did the whole interview in character, and Little Jimmy kept interrupting, and we put that all in the article. And actually, that's how I met Ron Hutchison. Ron read the article and thought it was so brilliant that he reached out to me through email or whatever. He reached out to me, and that's how him and I met the first time and became friends. So hard to pinpoint, man. I did Edge at WrestleMania in LA in my hotel room. Uh, DDP hooked me up with Scott Hall one time. Probably the most read piece of my entire career was that one, because one of the big U.S. wrestling sites picked it up and shared it, and it blew our website up in Kingston. Like, my boss was like, "We've never seen an article have 90,000 reads like in a week," right? And he's like, "It's crazy." So I think that one topped it at around 1 million reads. It was nuts, like,
Yeah.
just nuts.
I remember that
So,
article too.
yeah,
That was a fantastic read. And the reason why I started laughing hysterically, not to cut you off, was the Little Jimmy article. I remember that article, and a funny story about that. I remember reading it, and I was eating. I still eat cereal to this day. Okay, I love my cereal.
love cereal.
I was eating a bowl of cereal. I had a coffee in my hand, and I remember just reading the article, and I got to one part the first time Little Jimmy interrupted him, and just the way you kind of told it and the way you set it all up, I spit Cheerios all over the paper, and I had to go out and get another one. So thank you for that.
Yes, I mean, they've just piled up. I mean, Trish Stratus, Bret Hart gave me a great interview one time when he was still blackballed in WWE. Talked about Owen. I interviewed Owen Hart when he was alive. I gave the autograph that he gave me to Natty years later. She has that now. I actually have this headband that was given to me. One of the collectors or some collector along the way handed me a Dusty Rhodes headband and said it belonged to him and wanted me to give it to Dreamer. I never got it to Dreamer, but I'm going to give it to Cody. And I've told Cody I've got it. I'm in possession of it. And I am going to get it to him because it was his dad's, right? So, um, yeah, man, like Jim Ross, I mean, JR was a great interview. JR is an absolute legend. Um, I have some eerie ones too. Chris Benoit was one I got after he won the world championship, and then it was about a year or so later he murdered his family. When you go back and read that one now, it's eerie. Like it is eerie because I think I opened with a question about family. Like what did you think about when you won the when you won? Well, who was the first person you thought about? And of course, he started with Stu Hart, and then it moved into his family, and it's creepy. Like it's
Yeah.
very very creepy. Yeah, there are so many, man. Over time, Jake Roberts gave me a great one. This was at the height of his struggles with DDP. DDP put him on the phone for me. The real honest, raw stuff when you get people when they're at their most vulnerable sometimes make for very powerful interviews. I guess I like that people can track down my stuff and learn. They can learn stuff about people. Maybe where they came from or a little bit about their childhoods, things like that. It's always fun to revisit that stuff. My last interview with Punk was really good. He can be thorny. Used to be. Seems like a delight now. Everything I'm seeing with him, he's so happy right now. So
When you have the stress, when you're stress free and you're just going in to actually just work and go home, life can be a breeze. It really can.
yeah, yep. DDP was a long one I did one time too. Dallas is a great guy, a real inspiration for. He's helped a lot of people out. Chris Jericho a bunch of times. Another guy who is always a good interview. Um, every once in a while, I like to do one in character here and there, like that little Jimmy one. And I have offered to do Christian Cage in character because I think I could do a lot with an interview like that.
Oh, yeah.
I really like what he's doing. It takes a lot for me to be interested in interviewing someone in character. They have to like have really gotten my attention.
Uh-huh.
And Christian Cage has really gotten my attention in the last couple of years. With he's doing some of the best work of his career. So he'd be somebody I would be willing to stay in character with.
I
So
think that
yeah,
would I think that would be phenomenal. But when you think about all the names that you just listed, it's a long list, and it's a determined to your work ethic and how well you push and the connections that you made, but also the great storytelling ability that you have. And I want to switch gears to Chinlock, which is a great promotion that you have out in Kingston, and you have had some great matches. You yourself have been involved in a few storylines with we know CJ Felony. We know all the history there between you and
yeah.
Felony. You and Felony have a very tumultuous love, hate, really hate, dislike, hate, and really, really, really hate relationship. I don't ever think there actually, I'm going to scratch love from there completely. Love has never really been there between you and CJ. But when I look at Chinlock and everything you've done with that promotion and the fact that coming out of the pandemic, I remember you kind of stepped away from writing for a bit, but you were so focused on what the next Chinlock experience is going to be, and now it's become a staple out in Kingston. It is the promotion out there, and it deserves to be the promotion out there with all the great stuff you've done for that city and all the great charity work that you've done and all the great charity work that Chinlock continues to do. And talking about opportunities and young wrestlers that you've helped along the way. When you look at Chinlock and all the great stuff that you've done, all the fun stuff that you've done, I have to ask. I mean, I'm sure it's at the top of the list, but every time you've been able to shut up CJ Felny, that's got to be the highlight of the list, right?
It's definitely up there. We have had some wild things, like we tore Leon's furniture apart. I think that might be the greatest moment in Chinlock. We had Bill Welichka um, having a match, which Bill has had several matches over his life, through his Much Music days and here in Kingston. So we were, just announcing a partnership with Leon's, and CJ Felony interrupted, and he and Welichka got into it right there. They broke a bed frame that still sits in the store, broken to this day. Um, that was pretty wild. I mean, he hit me a couple times. I mean, he put my kids in tears when he hit me with a garbage can um, in 2018 at Queens. Um, No, sorry, 2017 at the Kingston Gospel Temple. We moved to 2018 the next year, and he got hit by the garbage can. Chinlock 5, he nailed me before the show. Like I saw stars. Like I saw stars. He hit me so hard. But yeah, and then we battled it out finally after that. We had our one and only match, and I beat him for my brother's championship. So his reign as the Cale Murphy Memorial Champion was short lived. Yeah, he tried this babyface turn a little while ago. No one was buying it, and sure enough, his true colors shone through at our last show, and he was in a dog collar match. And yeah, we've had a tremendous long experience, and I'll tell you on this show, if I ever have another match, and I believe I have one match left in me, I would be willing to put my career versus his career in a match. That's how passionately I feel about my rivalry and my past with CJ Felony. If the situation were ever to present itself, I would fight him, or loser retires. Absolutely.
Would it be a stipulation match? Would it be like a street fight? Would it be like just a regular match? Would it be a hardcore match, a lumberjack match? How would you do career versus CJ Felmy?
Well, I know for a fact that he has always dreamed of and wanted to have a steel cage match. So I would have to say, if we could get our mitts on a steel cage, I'd do it inside of a cage with him
I think
one time.
I would love to see that. I would sit front row. You know what I could do is that I could be the Jan Murphy of that Chinlock event. I could be the writer. I could tell your story. I could be like, in the rafters high above the Leon's Arena in Kingston, Jan Murphy reflects on his historic rivalry with CJ. See, it's just writing itself, Jan. It's writing
It
itself.
writes itself. So yeah, I mean, I would. I'm telling you here right now, I would, if I could get my hands on a steel cage. I know he's on the latter part of his career. He doesn't work as much anymore, and I don't work. I've wrestled one match against him. It was more of a street fight. But for the right charity and the right situation, I would do it. I'd get into the steel cage with CJ Felony and put my career against his career. Loser retires.
I put my money on Jan Murphy all day long. And not just because we're friends. I know you. I know you. When push came to shove and you had to fight him for your brother's memorial title, everything was on the line. And I actually want to switch gears and get a little personal. You and your brother had such an amazing relationship, and I don't think we ever touched on it or talked on it. But making that memorial title, making that decision to honor him in that way forever, his name cemented on that title. What was it like when, I mean, all the CJ Felony stuff aside, but what was it like when that title was presented to you for the first time and you were able to see his name etched in Chinlock history forever?
I mean, it's pretty crazy. I recall, I have little pockets of recollections because you know it's like that with my whole career. Sometimes I really have to go back and revisit something to remember it. But I remember coming up with the idea and taking it to the guys and saying, this is what I want to do, and it was absolutely 100%. And in those days, again, we weren't making money. We were just running shows to raise money for charities and turning it all over. So we had to fundraise to be able to get that title. And then Jason Reese, of course, our designer, Jaybird Digital Arts, designed the title, and it was amazing. And then when it came, when it arrived, and I laid my hands on it for the first time in the lime green, that was my brother's favorite color, with his photo on the side plates and his name, on a big beautiful championship. Yeah, it was really really special. And you know, we don't we probably don't have as many events a year as I would like to be able to parade the title around and do things, but every time we do, it's very very special. And to have held that title briefly, because I did step away from it right away, because it was never about holding a title. It was just about getting it out of CJ's hands. Um, yeah, it's fun, and I like that every show we have, we can honor him a little bit with a match in his honor, and someone can walk around with that title in between. Next year, I don't know if we're going to talk about this or not, but next year is our 10th anniversary, which is mind-boggling to me. And I'm in the process. We are in the process of trying to put together a crazy schedule for next year, and possibly another large scale event. So, the Kale title will be figure prominently into that stuff as well.
Well, you segue perfectly, and that's what true journalism do. I definitely did want to talk about next year being the 10 year because I did my research. I always pride myself in my research. But yeah, 10 years, Chinlock. That's incredible. And if you look at Chinlock 5, the success that it was a crazy weekend. I know you were a busy, busy man, but you did stop to say hello. We did end up taking a picture as well, which was
Yeah,
fantastic. And you and I became pretty quick friends, if I remember correctly, because it
yeah,
was you. We did that, and then it's been a steady stream of cracking jokes on Facebook every now and again, like all of us dads do. That's what we do
yeah.
now, because Facebook is only cool for our generation, Jan. It's not cool for anybody else.
No, I don't have to worry about any of my kids being on there.
Yeah,
They have
absolutely.
to they have to search me out, and then they're like, "Dad, I didn't like your live today." Like, oh, it wasn't made for you. So
It wasn't made for you. It was made.
sorry, they don't call me dad. It's bruh,
Yeah, I
bruh.
was gonna say you posted that as a girl dad, one girl dad to another before we get into the 10 year. Yeah, my daughter says bro to me all the time. She's been bugging me to because she's now into really video games. She's 14 going on 15. She's very much into video games, loves Last of Us. She's like, Dad, you gotta play Last of Us. I was like, I don't want to play Last of Us. She's like, bro, I'll do something for you. I'm like, what will you do for me? She's like, okay, you've been busting my butt to watch Back to the Future. I will watch Back to the Future. I was like, oh my God, you will watch all three Back to the Futures. I mean, the third one is not the greatest, but you'll watch one and two if I play this game. And she's like, yeah, I'll watch one and two. So guess what, Jan? I played it. I beat it. She watched one and two. And guess who's a fan of Back to the Future now, Jan? Dads are cool, bro. Dads are cool.
Dads are cool. They are, and the Back to the Futures are the greatest movies of all time. So
Absolutely. I mean, come on. Back to the Future 2 is my absolute favorite because I love how they go forward and then backwards.
oh,
Love it. Old Biff. Old Biff.
greatest sequel ever.
Absolutely. One of the few sequels that surpasses the original along same lines of Godfather Part 2. Surpasses
Terminator 2 and
Terminator
Terminator
2.
2.
Yep, Terminator 2 as well. I would say Beverly Hills Cop 2 as well. It's
Yeah.
a solid one. Yeah, there's a lot of Sister Act 2. Did we talk Sister Act? Sister Act 2?
We did not.
No, we did not talk. But let's switch gears back to being girl dads aside. 10-year anniversary. I know you said, you're building up a crazy schedule, another full-scale event. A lot of work went into that first event, Chinlock 5, and it took a lot of people to make that happen. And it was such a success. How can you build on that full-scale event? And what could you possibly do to outdo that first event that was incredible?
Well, yeah, the first event, I must say, two key players in all of that were Sean Quigley of Youth Diversion and of course Tommy Dreamer, who helped us book all those legends and get the best prices that we could to try and rein things in, because I still think we spent $100,000 on that show when all was said and done. So that's how quickly it can run up. And now we're in 2024 and everything costs 40 or 50% more than it did in 2019. Yeah, I mean, it's putting together a team behind the scenes, which we've been kind of doing. I mean, we have a small nucleus of us now. Sideshow, myself, Jason, Mike Swindley, and then I've pulled Sean Quigley back in, and we've reached out to a bunch of different groups and charities that I think there are 8 or 9 that we're hoping to be able to support with an event next year. The difference this time is 5 years later, my connections and my presence in the community has changed and grown a lot through leaving the newspaper industry and venturing out into small business and coming back into the newspaper industry in a different role through getting involved in community organizations and just meeting more people and making more people. But I mean, honestly, I'm out and about all the time with my job. So I have connections now that I didn't have in 2019, important ones like at the venue and with the city, and those connections will help make this vision, if we can. Again, it's all about money. It's truly really all about finding the money to put one of these shows on, because Dreamer pulled me aside way back before we did our first Chinlock event when he was showing me what he did with House of Hardcore, and he said, the best piece of advice I'll ever give you is you don't ever count on your gate to pay for your show. So don't just put tickets on sale and bank on those tickets to pay for the show. Have the money or don't do the show. So that's been our model for the entire time. And I've watched so many independent startups try to start up, sell a bunch of tickets, realize they had no money to pay for the venue, the talent, whatever it may be. They stiff somebody and their name is mud. That was never the way we did things. And we still do it this way. We have a little bit more flexibility. We can spend a little bit over our punching weight, if you will, sometimes if because we have a little bit of cushion. And we're pretty confident in what we do now. We're pretty sure we're going to get 200 to 350 people every time, so we can punch a little above our weight class. But that's always been the way we did things. So for this show next year, how do I make it bigger? I make it a 3-part day instead of a 2-part day.
Mhm.
We finish with a live concert. That is the hope, and I can't say much more than that. Bouncing some ideas around about what to do in the morning, but I'm envisioning an all day long, festival that will blend music and wrestling together because I think they go so well together as it is. We'll tie some legends in there. I don't think I'll repeat the legends meet and greet thing that we did last time. I'll change it up a little bit. I might just go big. I might just go for one big, humongous name and bank on that paying for itself. And then we'll have a wrestling show in the afternoon, and we've got some crazy stuff. Again, with Dreamer being involved, we got some crazy ideas going around for that. And then my hope is a concert in the evening to shut it all down. But again, it really comes down to coming up with the money ahead of time, finding a sponsor or sponsors that are willing to invest into what I believe could be something that raises anywhere from 300,000 to $1 million, depending on how well it does and where we set ticket prices. But I'm always a stickler for make it affordable, make it so everybody can go. Don't price yourself out of the market, right? We started at $10 tickets. We're 10 years later, we're still 20. Yeah, I think we're 20. I think we're $20. And I've always believed that's a magic number. You want a family of 4 or 5 to come to your show, keep it under $100 for that to happen, right? Because when they get there, they're going to want to buy some merch. They're going to want to have a slice of pizza and a drink. We're raising money. We're not raising ourselves here. So
Mhm.
that's always been the way we handled things. We made sure the shows were paid for in advance. And yeah, so going into next year, my hope is we've been running about 4 shows a year for the last since the pandemic. I'd like to do 6 next year to sort of commemorate our 10th anniversary. With a couple of really wild possibilities that we're looking at. Whether I can bring them together or not remains to be seen, but some really neat, fun stuff. And then July would be when we did that big event. If I can, get the wheels off the ground, as it were. My plan would be to have that announced by the end of this year if we do. So the last time we didn't announce until February, and I found February to June to put an event like that together and promote it properly was absolute like pandemonium. Just flew by, like weekly meetings and booking, advertising on buses and social media and radio and TV and newspaper. A lot of that stuff we don't have anymore in Kingston either. The radio and newspaper industries have taken a massive hit. Now the television news as well. So getting the word out is a lot more difficult. You have to pound the pavement, which is
Mhm.
what we did. Leon's and some of those publicity stunts that we did.
Absolutely. Well, you got Straight Talk Wrestling as promotion. Whenever you announce it, you can fully come on as often as you like. Plug ads, all kinds that will help Chinlock in any way that I can. Because, like I said, without you getting me that first big interview, I don't think the doors would have opened quite as much as they have. So I appreciate you for that, and I am indebted forever for that. So
Well, no problem, man. And next time WWE's up for doing some stuff in your market, I'll drop your name for them.
oh
Help
my
you
God.
try and get your foot in the door there. They're good folks who work for WWE. There's just so many fewer of them now. Whew, they used to have an entire division in Canada. I knew everybody who worked there. There were probably 10 people who worked there at the time, along with Carl DeMarco, the president. And then it moved solely down to the States, and they still had a nice crew of probably 8 or 10 reps that I dealt with, maybe even more. And now there's 4, I think, 3, 4. So they're in the same boat, right? Everybody's tightened everything up, but they're good folks, and I'm happy to drop a reference for you.
No. Well, I appreciate that. I didn't get into this conversation for that, but that touches my heart. Thank you for that. My final question before I let you go. When you look at starting this business as in putting pen to paper and telling these incredible stories, stepping away, small business stuff, then coming back into it. Do you find yourself now in a point where you're telling the stories in a different way than you were before you went into the small business game? Or has your story game stayed the same because if it ain't broke, don't fix it?
That's a good question. I talked to Chris Van Vliet about that because, I think if I've noticed any change in what I do, um, I was obviously very hungry when I was younger, but that hunger has never ended. I have never said no unless I'm physically incapable. Like if I'm going to be away, because sometimes I am, I just don't say no. When they text me with an opportunity, yes, the answer is yes, 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 yes. I find a way. I've done interviews in my truck. I've done them in the back room at work. I've done them like in my out on my lawnmower. Like you just don't say no. You just those opportunities were given to you. They're gifts, and I've never said no. Probably the only change I think I maybe have noticed in myself is when I was younger, I might have been going for a little bit more of I had a narrow focus that I knew I wanted. So I want to ask these questions. I no longer write anything down for an interview. My preparation is I read, it's in my head, but it's a casual conversation. There's no, looking at my notes anymore. So certainly that has changed. Um, I sit down and have conversations now. I watch enough wrestling. I know enough about an individual before I, go in to sit down with them or go to interview them that I'm not going to look like a fool. Probably the other thing that has changed is, back then I would have had my focuses and really knew what I wanted to do with an article. Now I find myself more inclined to help them promote the events that they're trying to promote. Um, doesn't mean I don't pop, the odd question in there that I'm curious about myself. But I find myself helping AEW and WWE more promote what the events are that they're wanting to do. So I'll ask more questions about the market or um, you know, about a certain event where I wouldn't have done that so much in my younger days. I would have gotten my 5 or 10 questions, written out before, and then I would eliminate them, and some I knew I wasn't going to get to. Every once in a while, I'll do that if it's somebody um, that I have a lot that I want to cover. I'll still maybe make a few notes, but those would be the biggest changes. I think I'm certainly a lot more relaxed at this point. Like it takes a lot. I guess John Cena got me off guard in Toronto because I hadn't seen John in forever, and they gave me the first question, so I did forget to announce my name. But it was because it was kind of chaotic. The guys who were with me were making fun of me because I didn't announce who I was or my media. But the way that the reps were, John looked like John was going to start asking questions, and they wanted me to get the first one because I was Toronto at an event in Toronto, right? I mean, it makes sense. You're going to give the first question to the hometown media. And I mean, we have such a long relationship. So I kind of stammered and sputtered a little bit getting that one out because of the chaos. But yeah, I mean, by and large, I was making notes for that, I guess is my point. Well, we were watching the show. I knew I was going to the post show press conference. So I was making little notes in my phone just to jog my memory. Because if you do get caught off, flat footed, they point to you and Triple H wants you to ask a question. You don't want to ask something dumb because you've seen what happens when they give it to people who ask dumb questions.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone looks like a fool, and I'm so old school, George. I have been begging them forever to make those media conferences uh, just add a dress code. That's all I ask. Like I dress the part, right? I wear a shirt and a tie. I'm not even saying you have to wear a shirt and a tie, but maybe a collared shirt, right? It looks better on TV. Well, now they don't show them on TV. Now they just point the cameras at the press conference because I think after a while they were pointing the cameras at all these guys and they were wearing, Stone Cold Steve Austin t-shirts and ball caps backward, and it just doesn't look like a real press conference. And that's what I think they want. They wanted a press conference. It's working. The format is brilliant. I mean, I think I was at the first or second one that they did. Was Elimination Chamber the first they did?
I believe Elimination Chamber was the
Yeah,
first
I
one. I
think it
remember
was the
seeing you,
first.
and I was like, "Hey,
Yeah,
there he is!"
and it has morphed so much since then. It's so polished now. Now they don't even point to the questions. You hear the question, and it goes back to the panel, right? They polished it even more, and I think it's great what they do. Just they captured another lightning in a bottle, right? I mean, they threw this thing against the wall, it stuck, and now it's part of every PLE post show. Is this press conference with the same some really good stuff comes out of it. But yeah, those are kind of how I've changed the long version of that answer. You can edit it down.
Absolutely, absolutely. And my bonus question, because I think the relationship with you and John Cena sparks this question. John Cena is now on his farewell tour. It is happening. It is starting. It is working. We're going to see it. A lot of people have speculated on who his last match should be, who his final match should be. Some people say Randy. Some people say even somehow tying in the Wyatt Six, maybe making them like a legend killer format. There have been so many things that have kind of been thrown against the wall with the international wrestling community. But I'm curious to see where your head's at, because you're a booker and you tell stories and you follow John Cena's career from start to finish. Who do you think should be his last match?
Boy, I'm going to be honest. I haven't given it a whole lot of thought. Let me just say this: if I win the lottery between now and January, I am going to go to every show that John Cena is on. I have that much love and respect for what he's done. I predict a 17th World Championship in that run. I think Ric Flair has sullied his name enough at this point that you need to put somebody wholesome and clean and amazing like John Cena into that all-time spot. Flair can sit at number 2. Maybe some other people will reach that pinnacle at some point. Who do I think? I mean, Orton makes too much sense to me. Like, it just does. And both are in the twilight of their career. I don't know what they can offer. I say that now, but 30 matches from now for John Cena, I think he's going to be in better shape than he's in right now. So perhaps you could probably convince me on that one. You could say next December, Cena is going to be in, peak ring form again. Orton's healthy, same thing. They're both going to be in great shape. So you could sell me on that one. You'd have a hard time selling me on the passing of the baton. I just think that has kind of passed a little bit. I mean, I don't see John Cena coming back to do a year-long run and then just passing the torch to somebody else. It happens. It's happened throughout history, but this doesn't have that vibe to me. Maybe a Roman Reigns. I really don't know what they're going to do. It has to be a big match. It has to be maybe Orton, decides he wants to retire too, or one of them wants to retire. Cena wins and Orton retires. They both walk away at the same time. Really, really hard to know. I don't know how I'd fancy book that one. The stuff that I'm enjoying the most right now, I mean, I still absolutely love the Bloodline stuff. It hasn't faded at all. Cody Rhodes would be a great match. A lot of it, I guess, will hinge on whether he does win that 17th title and where he wins that and how long he holds that. Does he lose it and retire? Does he win it and retire? To me, that's the way to do it. That's so rarely done, that somebody wins a championship and retires, and then you just start over. That's the way I'd like to see it. If I'm booking it next year at Survivor Series War Games, which probably will be the last PLE of next year. If I'm booking that, I'm going. If he's going to win it there, and then just set it down in the ring and walk away, kind of like the Undertaker did with his boots.
Yep, I think that's fire. I like that. I love it. Win it, retire it. Boom, done. See you later.
Set it down in the ring, and do your, and off you go. Right? I mean, he's incredible. I mean, you talk about guys who had no business being the face coming out of the Attitude Era and being given this impossible task of, carrying this company through a PG era, which hadn't happened since the 80s. And he did it with such class and such grace. And he just put the company on his shoulders and did it. Just like the Undertaker and Shawn Michaels kept the glue together during all the defections to WCW and to Turner. Like, there were there were a few guys who just kept things together. And I mean, even Austin wasn't around a lot at that because he was out, he was hurt, he was, fighting with the company. And to me, it was the Undertaker. It was the glue that was binding WWE at the time. John Cena was the glue in that post Attitude Era, getting them so they can do this what they're doing now, heading to Netflix on an insane, like, so much money, and they're gonna turn, Raw. They're gonna have more attitude. It's gonna be great, and they owe a lot of that to John Cena. So I say give him the year, and man, we should really enjoy it and take it in because you don't see this very often. He's probably one of the few guys that would be worthy of that kind of a farewell tour, and it's going to be awesome. I'm really looking forward to it. I'll go to as many of those events as I can possibly get to.
Absolutely. I'm right with you. When he came out of Money in the Bank, I was there. You were there. I mean, it was so awesome. But it was when I heard that music come out, I was like, oh yeah. I hadn't sang that song in forever. And it's the best hip hop song of all time, Jan.
And he was so great at the press conference, just defying the media people because they were like, "John's going to take 3 questions," and he's like, "Nope, I'm going to take as many questions as I want," and he did.
Yeah.
And he knew he was pissing off, people in the back because these guys want to go home after a long day. They've been at the stadium or the arena since 10 a.m., 11 a.m. for rehearsals and setup, and all the changes that they go through and everything like that. So by midnight, you're wanting to get out of there, and Cena's holding it hostage, right? Taking question after question before Punk.
Yeah.
Punk was great too, though. He came out with donuts and took a couple extra questions. So
Yeah.
all good.
That's what it's all about, right? It's all about like building those moments and memories, even for the people at the press conference, but even the people watching. Like I went home and watched the replay. I don't care. It took me an hour to get home. Toronto traffic sucks, but I did it. And I watched it at 2 in the morning and I loved everything about it. It was absolutely perfect.
I'll say one thing that everybody that talks about that company now and how great it is, there's a lot of reasons for that, but Triple H is a guy who sets the example. He works hard, he is tireless, he is patient, he is creative, he is innovative, he is meticulous. They're just following his lead, in my opinion. I mean, Nick Khan is amazing. Some of the other folks behind the scenes. I mean, Shawn Michaels with NXT, obviously, but to me, Triple H has been the steady hand back there that helped them get through the Vince stuff, that ugly, media frenzy that was, and now has people like CM Punk praising the situation backstage. So
It speaks to it, absolutely, 150%. Jan, we could talk wrestling all day long, but you gotta go enjoy the rest of your evening. I gotta go enjoy the rest of my evening. But my dude, this is always a pleasure. Every conversation with you is epic. It's fun. It's relaxed, and it's everything that both of us are accustomed to. We both just love shooting the shit, having great conversations. And my man, you are hands down one of the people that I owe a lot to, and I'll say it 50,000 times. So I
no,
appreciate you. And you know what? Fuck it. I love you like a brother, bro. I do.
love you too, brother. I appreciate that. That's too kind.
All right, guys, that's it for this one. Peace, love, and wrestling. We'll see you next week. Peace. Thank you so much for checking out our channel. If you like what you saw today, please feel free to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss any of our future videos and content. Also, you could follow us on all social media platforms. On X at _Straight Talk. On Facebook and Instagram at Straight Talk Wrestling. On TikTok at Straight_Talk_Wrestling. And of course, you could follow us on Podbean. Thank you.